In 1829, there was a British Illuminist named Francis Wright who came to excuse me, who came to New York City to promote a women's auxiliary of the Illuminati. Now remember, the Illuminati as an organization started in 1776. So we're basically getting the ball rolling here. They're getting into the United States at this time, trying to build alliances and starting to get people acclimated to the things they want to do as far as their goals. This lady was associated with Robert Dale Owen, who was a well-known socialist, and he's pretty much prominent in the history of socialism. Those present were told that an international movement of subversives were being developed along the lines of Illuminati principles, and they were to be known as communists. And this is the name that was actually used, and they were told that this organization was to bring chaos so the Illuminati could step in and bring order. So regardless of what we're told about what the communistic movement actually is, this is the birth of the communist organization that was birthed through the Illuminati to be an opposing force to bring chaos to the world. 1843, an article by poet Heinrich Heine was published in a book called Latisse, contained this package: communism is the secret name of the tremendous adversary. Communism is nonetheless the dark hero cast for an enormous, if fleeting, role in the modern tragedy and waiting his cue to enter the stage. There was 3 men who were appointed to help raise funds for this effort, and all 3 were members of the Columbia Lodge of the Order of the Illuminati, which had been established in New York City in 1785. First gentleman was Clinton Roosevelt. This is not Clinton Roosevelt. I couldn't find a picture of Clinton Roosevelt, but he was actually the ancestor to FDR, Franklin Roosevelt. But this gentleman was a New York assemblyman. He wrote a book called The Science of Government, founded on natural law, in which he said there is no God of justice to order things aright on earth. And he said that the Constitution was a leaky vessel which was hastily put together when we left the British flag and therefore needed to be revised. Horace Greeley was the second man. He was the editor of the New York Tribune and the New Yorker magazine. And he was one of the ones that helped reorganize the Republican Party after they went all through their phases and going back and forth in 1854. And in 1872, he ran for president on the liberal Republican ticket. There's different things that should stick in your mind when you see liberal. You know, obviously you see the word liberal, there's something going on there. He actually employed Karl Marx as a correspondent to cover the 1848 European revolutions. So you look at the names, you look at the organizations, you look at the people they hang out with, and you look at their fruits. The Bible says you should know them by their fruits. That's why when in our society today we can't look at things like that. We can't, there are so many things going on and politicians doing a lot of different things, and because we're so involved in everything, we can't keep an eye on what everyone's doing. There are people doing that and that have websites and that actually keep an eye on where people travel, who they meet with, how long they're there. So there are things in place for you to be informed if you want to be informed. Third gentleman was Charles Dana. He was the city editor on the New York Tribune, later became the editor of the New York Sun. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton had appointed him to be Assistant Secretary of War, and he was a socialist that actually lived in one of the experimental socialist communities known as the Brook Farm community. And these 3 gentlemen were very well known at the time, and they were used to raise funds to basically brainwash people into accepting this movement and to bring people in for leadership roles and to raise money and for finances. And leads us to Karl Marx. Karl Marx had a doctorate in philosophy and also studied economics. And as a teenager, he actually believed in God and trying to actually find out the incident in his life that made him an atheist. Could never find it, but something in his teenage years turned him around into what he became. When he went to college, he said that he wanted to avenge himself against the one who rules above. And he actually joined a satanic church, and there was in his writings there is mentioned a ritualistic name for Satan. 1848, he wrote the Communist Manifesto. History tells us that he worked on it from 1830 to 1847, and it represented an extension of Friedrich Engels' Confessions of a Communist. Friedrich Engels was his cohort in all of this, and actually was probably the one who had more of the inkling of putting everything down on paper, where Karl Marx was the visionary. In reality, many of Marx's ideas were gleaned from Weishaupt, Babeuf, Blank, Owen, Ogilvy, Hodgkin, Gray, Thompson, Carpenter, all of whom were involved in socialism. And also the Clinton Roosevelt's book on the natural law, that was also used there too. And actually, Karl Marx's name was not actually added to the manifesto until 20 years later. Now, Marx had joined the Communist League in London, and they commissioned the writing of the manifesto as their platform. And they were formerly known as the League of Just Men, which is the offshoot of the Parisian Outlaws League, which was founded by the Illuminati members who fled from Germany and were behind the French Revolution. They were called Jacobins. They had basically, when the German government came down on the Illuminati, they already had plans in the works for the French Revolution, and they went into France and started Jacobin clubs. And September 28, 1864, there was a meeting of the International Working Men's Association in London. And it was the Illuminati principles that were adopted, not the socialism that they thought that they were getting involved with. Marx later wrote to Engels, "I was present only as a dumb personage on the platform." And another report was from a Swiss socialist in attendance that said it was not true that the Internationale was the creation of Karl Marx. He was solely outside the preparatory work that took place from 1862 to 1864. And so people that are in the know the true mechanics behind the scenes of what communism actually represents. I remember reading something a couple years ago, I believe it was a book by Gary Allen, how David Rockefeller went over to Europe and then suddenly Khrushchev was taken out of office. And it was believed that David Rockefeller had something to do with it. Whether he did or not, I can't say, but there's a lot of things that happen over in Russia only after calls to New York. So there's definitely a connection there. Taylor Caldwell wrote in her 1972 novel Captains and the Kings, which was turned into a miniseries on NBC years ago, back during the 70s. She wrote that it wasn't until the era of the League of Just Men and Karl Marx that conspirators and conspiracies became one with one aim, one objective, and one determination. The manifesto advocated the abolition of private property, a heavy progressive or graduated income tax, the abolition of rights of inheritance, the confiscation of all the property of immigrants and rebels, the centralization of credit in the hands of the state with a national bank, centralization and state control of all communication and transportation, and free education for all children in public schools. And I color-coded that to see where in the yellow you can see those were the Illuminati goals. On the red you can see that they were the progressive or the populist goals, and in the blue they were the progressive goals as far as the Progressive Party. And so you can see they were all working together under different names but with the same goals. And again, like you can't. A lot of the talk shows, like I like Rush Limbaugh, but he does not accept the talk of the New World Order. And a lot of people they think you're over the edge, you're paranoid. Well, you're not paranoid; they're really after you. But you got to be very careful, and when you're talking to people about this sort of thing, because you can really come out as being over the edge and paranoid. But to me, I'm trying to put together a presentation where you can really bring up to people as evidence that you can use in an argument, because these are things that you're living in now, that you could concretely identify as being part of something that shouldn't be, that is being used to control us. The financing aspect of communism actually can be traced in a lot of different directions, because you have different organizations that are actually involved in the communist movement. The Fabian organization was one. They were very socialistic oriented. There was people that was giving to that movement, but that movement was actually contributing to communism, the communistic movement. But it's on record where financing for communism came through Nathan Rothschild and Jacob Schiff, who was part of the partnership of Kuhn and Loeb in New York. He gave $20 million. Sir George Buchanan, a British civil engineer, he gave quite a bit of money. Paul and Felix Warburg, who were also in the partnership of Kuhn and Loeb, gave money. Olaf Oxberg, Asperg, Nye Bank in Stockholm, Sweden, contributed to the communistic movement. William Boyce Thompson of Chase National gave $1 million. Chase National is the bank of the Rockefellers that actually became Chase Manhattan Bank. Albert Wiggin, also of Chase National, gave money. The Krupp family, German steel manufacturer, gave a lot of money also to the communist movement.